Namaskar, welcome back. Viewers, even though tensions were simmering for a long time, the sudden escalation in violence along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border took the entire world by surprise. What triggered this sudden violence, this escalation? Is there hope for peace in the coming days? And most importantly, should India be concerned with what is going on along the Af-Pak border? These are the questions we will go through in Media Scan this weekend, and for that we have experts who have been studying the area for a long time. But a quick look at the updates about what is happening in that region.
Pakistan and Afghanistan are engaged in a violent conflict along the Durand Line. In Afghanistan, at least 10 civilians were killed and a dozen more were injured last night after Pakistan launched an airstrike on a border province of Paktika. Among the dead include at least 3 local cricket players. The latest escalation broke a ceasefire that had brought 2 days of calm to the border areas. Qatar, which along with Saudi Arabia had pushed both sides to halt hostilities, offered to host their meeting in Doha. A reset in relations was expected after a couple of meetings between both the nations earlier this year. But last week, both fought a deadly war along their porous borders, diminishing hope for any peace. Pakistan is stated to have killed over 200 Afghanis, while Taliban claimed killing more than 50 Pakistani soldiers. All this comes at a time when Pakistan is already grappling with the Balochistan issue, and of course the protests in the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir demanding an immediate pause on exploitation of people living in the area by Pakistani authorities while completely ignoring the needs of the residents. All this added fuel to the already burning nation marred with regional and national tensions. The seething tensions between both nations have, least to say, created a major instability in a region already plagued with geopolitical issues.
So, with those quick updates, let me move on to our guest for this evening. I have here with me in the DD studios Alok Bansal, well-known geopolitical expert. You have been listening to him on Media Scan for a long time. Also joining me, Shiv Murari Sahai, former IPS, knows the entire Jammu Kashmir and the Pak border area like the back of his hand. Thank you, gentlemen, both of you, for finding the time, and let's start. I'll come to Mr. Bansal first. Alok Bansal, the first question here is, what triggered this sudden escalation in the violence? As we are aware, it happened at a time when the Afghan foreign minister was right here on Indian soil. Both the parties are blaming each other for the violence, but who do you think is really responsible?
See, firstly, we need to understand what is the background of the violence, because Taliban came to power with Pakistan's support, and Pakistan for years had been saying that peace in Afghanistan is only possible with Taliban in power. Having said that, Pakistan realized that Taliban is an ideological entity which has a very definitive radical Islamist ideology. And Taliban is, because of its ideology, there are a number of other outfits which are owing allegiance to Taliban, which includes hardcore jihadi terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda to organizations like Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and many others, including Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Yes.
And we need to understand that as Taliban captured power in Afghanistan, the violence by TTP and its influence in Pakistan grew. And since Pakistani security forces were not able to deal with them, they started blaming Afghanistan. Because obviously, because of ideological congruence or convergence, TTP operatives would often take shelter in Afghanistan. And as Pakistan saw that the level of violence in Pakistan kept increasing, they kept blaming Afghanistan, that Afghanistan is responsible and Afghanistan must do that. In the past also, they tried to carry out certain incursions, operations inside Afghanistan's borders, etc. And then we saw this state when Afghan foreign minister, the acting foreign minister, I would put it, from Taliban, traveled to Moscow first, where he met Pakistan and the 4 countries.
Yes.
And then he traveled to India. And the statements that started emanating from India actually threatened Pakistan. It felt that two of its enemies were coming together, and as a result we saw that Pakistan carried out aerial strikes. Now, aerial bombing inside somebody else's territory is a big event, and consequently Taliban carried out a ground offensive along the border, and they destroyed.
So to put it in one line, you think the immediate trigger for the incident was what happened between India and the Afghan minister, the dialogue and the talk of cooperation between the two nations. Let me have a take from Shiv Murari Sahai on this. Do you agree that the warm meetings which the Afghan foreign minister had with the Indian establishment might have triggered these attacks? Also, I want to know from you, there are too many claims and counterclaims about how many people died on which side, and both of them are claiming, Pakistan is saying Taliban does not have the capabilities, the defense capabilities to fight an army like Pakistan army. Afghans are saying Pakistan was beaten so badly, it had to beg for peace. So where do you think the truth really lies?
Well, firstly, in war, the first casualty is always the truth. So you will never get a correct picture, but if you analyze it in its perspective, then I mean, if the Pakistanis want to believe that an army like Afghanistan cannot beat them, we must remember that the Afghans have been responsible for defeating very well known conquering armies, starting from the Mongols. In fact, Genghis Khan's son died in Afghanistan, and then they defeated the British. I mean, before that they have also been known to have defeated the Greeks, then they defeated the British, then they have defeated the Russians, now they have defeated the Americans, and they are very proud of that fact. So, I mean, Pakistan compared to these forces in its own time is not that great a power, but I think they have got a confidence primarily because of their close connection with China now, and plus the warming up that America is doing with Pakistan. So, this is giving them some kind of confidence. We must also understand that what has been Pakistan's conduct with the Afghans. Now, the thing is that the Durand line, which they are now trying to fence, has been a problem for them and will always be a problem, because Afghan politics is all determined by the Pashtuns.
Yes.
And this line divides the Pashtuns in a manner that the complete empowerment of the Pashtuns, whether it is in Afghanistan or in Pakistan, is not taking place. So, this will always be an irritant with them. Second point which we tend to forget is that Pakistan is a bully state, and they have held the Taliban to ransom using their families who are seeking refuge in Pakistan all these years.
No, but
so
like Captain Bansal just said, ideologically they are congruent. I mean, they are not very different.
And ideological congruence always tends to then become to be tested on the realities of relationships.
Right.
So, just being Muslim has never been a point that has ever brought anybody together. That history has proved adequately, not only in this area, but everywhere in the world. So, let us see that. But I think this is a very important point which we tend to forget. So, Taliban, which may have been on the surface very cooperative with Pakistan all the time that they were fighting the Russians and then the Americans, were actually not very happy with them. Merely because of this, that they were being held to ransom, as their families were all sitting in Pakistan. So, once they expelled the families, the Afghans got into their own. Second is that when Pakistan has used the Mujahideen and Islamic extremism as an instrument against both Russia and America, suddenly you can't turn around and say that one extremist is not as good as the other.
And I am the victim.
And I am the victim. So, basically Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, if you look at its history, was created because of a problem with Chinese hairdressers. And that is when the Lal Masjid episode took place, and subsequently the Masood and Orakzai tribes formed what is called the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. So, they have been at loggerheads with the Pakistani establishment way back from 2007. So, this is not a new development.
No.
It became you calibrated your support or offensive, Pakistan did that, depending on how much utility they saw with them on the issue of countering America or countering Russia.
So, in one line, Pakistan is suffering from what it has itself, it is itself responsible for what we are seeing on the ground today. But I am now also joined by Abhinav Pandya, You have been listening to him on Media Scan earlier, geopolitical expert, author. Abhinav, I want to come to you now. And even as late as this Friday, almost till the weekend, we have seen that there were reports. I saw one update on 7 Pakistani soldiers being killed along the Durand line. So clearly, this talk of ceasefire, we have seen some kind of halt in action. But do you think peace is really possible? Are you hopeful, or peace will remain elusive for a long time?
Well, I must say that the Durand line has always been a major issue between Afghanistan and Pakistan. We all know about that. But here we must understand the fact that Taliban is an ideological beast. Pakistan created Taliban. Okay? And, as far as religious part is concerned, the ideology is concerned, definitely there is a very strong congruence. The Taliban has been born and brought up in the, I would say, Deobandi seminaries based in Pakistan. In fact, during the entire American global war on terror, Pakistan found safe sanctuaries in Quetta, and Quetta Shura was very famous for giving all the commands and everything. But if you move beyond religion, then all these differences emerge, and they are mostly over the issues of ethnicity, identity, and boundary. But I feel that, Pakistan army is a very adaptive army. Whatever you see on the border, these tensions will continue, because as long as you don't settle the boundary, definitely this is going to continue. But then, based on the geopolitical requirements and realities, Pakistan army is very flexible. They can definitely activate various religious establishments to find peace with Taliban. And then we also need to look at the internal dynamics, like within Taliban.
Even in the last week Flashpoint, till now Pakistan has been saying that we did not make those aerial attacks. Officially they have not owned them.
In Pakistan, if they require, let me tell you, I've spoken to the people who have been active in militancy on the Afghan side and this side also. So they say that, if it comes to some sort of a fight against India, that too, basing it on the grounds of religion, I won't be surprised, if all these elements cobble up together, they come together. Because remember, all these elements like Jaish and Lashkar, they have fought alongside Taliban against the Americans. So there are very strong, robust ties. Pakistan, in that Binori town mosque and Madrasa Haqqaniya, which are still inside the Pakistan, there is a very strong influence of Pakistani army veterans on these institutions. And within Taliban also, you need to look at the differences. So the Kandahar segment, the Akhundzada faction and all, they're more religious, ideologically rigid and, I would say, indoctrinated, as compared to the northern side, the Haqqani faction. They are getting, I would say, more exposed to the foreign influences, and also they're becoming a little more, I wouldn't say liberal, but just a bit more pragmatic and flexible. So these internal dynamics are also playing out. And at this moment, we must understand that Pakistan is very emboldened because of its, strong ties with China and Americans. So, they are likely.
So I'll come to that also. How much, how much of a player the US is in this entire escalation, whether it is a player at all. But let me come to Captain Bansal here. Sir, I want to understand from you, immediately after the escalation along the Af-Pak border, we started seeing statements coming from Pakistan saying that it has all been, India is behind all that is happening. And finally, the Ministry of External Affairs had to issue a very terse and strong statement to show that Pakistan is suffering of its own doing. So, it happened when there was trouble in POK. Balochistan is a constant problem for Pakistan. Every time Pakistan has been pointing fingers at India. But should it also not understand why people in its own provinces are so unhappy and not ready to, tolerate those hukmarans anymore?
See, firstly, let there be no doubt that Pakistan for now some time has been blaming India for anything and everything.
Yes.
It calls Baloch Liberation Army, Baloch Liberation Funds as organizations backed by India or created by India. Similarly, TTP is also being talked in religious terms as Khawarij or something which has a connotation in Islamic lexicon. Having said that, and as I said, since Pakistan has not been able to counter both Baloch nationalists as well as TTP, they put the blame on external powers. That is the best way they can do. Pakistan has never been able to resolve its internal differences, and this is primarily because Pakistan is being created based on a flawed ideology. I have always believed the two-nation theory was a flawed ideology, and you can't build an edifice over a flawed foundation. Now, to say that just because we are Muslims, we are all Pakistanis doesn't work. Ethnic fault lines cannot be subsumed by an all-inclusive Islamic identity. More importantly, when Pakistan was created, they thought that not only ethnic identities, but even sectarian fault lines will be bridged. To date, Pakistan has not been able to define who is a Muslim, and as a result, you have sectarian fault lines. Now, today, TTP wants to create Islamic Amirat. Pakistan is Islamic Republic, but it is not Islamic Amirat. So, ideologically, there is a difference. I did not say Pakistan and Taliban have ideological convergence or congruence. I said TTP and Taliban have ideological convergence. In fact, TTP considers Amirul Momin as they have taken bath. They owe allegiance to Amirul Mominin, who is the leader of Taliban. And similar is the case with Jaish. Please understand. So, this factor needs to be understood. To date, Taliban has not handed over one person who has owed allegiance to them to any foreign power, be it ETIM of China or TTP of Pakistan. They have only been relocated when the countries have talked too much that there is a problem, they relocate them inside, but they have never handed. They earlier also refused to hand over Osama bin Laden, if you remember, to US.
Correct.
So, Taliban is unlikely to make any compromise with their ideology. This factor needs to be understood. Abhinav talked about moderate and this. Yes, there are differences between Kandhari Taliban and Kabul Taliban.
And the north.
But again, let me make it very clear. Amirul Muminin's word is the final edict. As long as he lives, his word will prevail. Though many in Kabul feel that women should be allowed, this should be the. So much so that when there was an earthquake, and Amirul Mominin said that the male rescuers cannot touch the female.
So, they left the dead bodies
of
the women.
So, that's why I said. No, they left women to die because they were not women rescuers.
Because they said only family members have the right to touch the dead body of a woman.
Only people who are mahram. Family members also, it is actually defined who can do that. So, please understand, ideologically Taliban is an extremely rigid organization. And this ideology permeates inside Pakistan. For the first time.
So, what is, I mean, how is it going to play out?
So, this is what I am trying to say. This is where the problem is that earlier also when you saw, there are people within the armed forces, there are people within the political establishment who have sympathies with Taliban. Now, when it comes to pure military dynamics, see, Pakistan has a fairly advanced air force. Afghanistan doesn't have anything to counter, and that's why aerial bombing is feasible. And now Pakistan has accepted that they bombed it. In fact, they said they tried to target Nurwali Masood, who is the leader of TTP, who survived. Now they have issued the photos of Spin Boldak where they actually targeted
Spin Boldak.
So in Afghanistan, in Kandahar province, they have shown the photos also they have released. So they are showing that they are carrying out an air attack. They said we carried out an attack in Kabul also, which was precision attack to prevent casualties to civilian population. That's what they are saying.
I'll carry on this conversation with Mr. Sahai also. Sir, you were talking about the fact that just being Muslims has never been a reason for peace, and we have seen there are constant examples of it. Now here Pakistan, they said we have a right to carry out any exercise because it is a terror situation and we have a right to protect ourselves, to which Afghanistan raised the issue of sovereignty. However, my question is, recently we saw an agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia that if there is any attack from any side, it will be considered an attack on both the countries. But when this happened along the border, there was a very clear statement from Saudi Arabia calling for peace from both sides and not to escalate tensions, etc. Clearly, the agreement on paper has, I mean, it's not showing in practical terms.
Well, how do you define war and aggression? In this case, Pakistan is the aggressor. Now, whatever quote unquote the terror attacks that the Pakistan claims, it's not being done by Taliban. It is being done by the TTP. So, there is actually no legitimacy of invoking that act. Secondly is that whatever one may say, it is going to be an act which will probably be always invoked by Saudi Arabia. It will be very difficult for the Pakistanis to invoke it against for their own protection, because who are they going to fight? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's only India. There is going to be no fight with any of their other neighbors. Land battles is where the war is going to take place. Where aerial battles are concerned, those are basically strikes. So, if you look at it from that
You
perspective,
don't agree there may be a situation with Iran anytime?
it can be a situation with Iran, but I think Pakistan will also tread on that very carefully. Though of course we know that Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Iran both are at loggerheads. But in the overall Muslim narrative, in the overall Muslim world, Pakistan will find it very difficult, because Pakistan has been trying to position itself as the net security provider for the Islamic world. So, they are constantly trying to bring this out. With Iran, they have had a very hot and cold relationship. They warm up to them periodically, and at times then they distance themselves. You may have noticed that it was in context of the strikes that had to be done on Iran by the Americans and the Israelis that this whole warming up to Asim Munir took place.
Yes.
It did not deliver, but the fact is that the relationship is warming up. So, there is going to be that part of on the western side of Pakistan.
But it is basically India specific, this agreement, or if there is any other agreement.
I would believe not so. I don't think it's India specific, because I don't think the Saudis are going to get involved with any fight between India and Pakistan. They haven't done it historically, they won't do it even now.
So, for whose consumption was that agreement then?
It's basically, I think it is for basically Saudi Arabia's own protection. Because if you note that the Pakistanis are personally responsible for their security. So, they have that relationship.
Yes, so that brings me to perhaps the last question of the episode, because I have very little time left. Abhinav, we cannot, there is one player in this entire scenario which is not showing, may not be showing so explicitly, but we know that the US, shifting angles, shifting perspectives of the US is somewhere a point in this entire situation, and the US wants very badly to have the Bagram air base. Afghanistan has said nothing doing, and then we are seeing escalation from one point to another. How do you look at the role of USA in this entire scenario, and where do you think it will lead?
Well, US is interested, in this region, and particularly the militancy dynamics, in a very serious manner. Definitely, they want Bagram Air Base. There are a lot of, I would say, rumors prevailing about that they need Bagram Air Base to do something in Iran, maybe, or maybe develop it as some sort of a South Asian outpost intelligence center. But yes, they are up to that, and I guess if that is the objective in mind, then they would like to engage with Taliban. They have done it in the past, and I guess they are likely to do so that in the future also. Secondly, US is also interested in the region because of this whole ISKP phenomenon. And here I would like to point out that Pakistan has lately developed a modus vivendi with the Islamic State Khorasan province. And you can see that in Balochistan, they are doing a lot of operations against the Baluch rebels, but not against the ISKP. Now, the ISKP people have a lot of training centers in Balochistan, and I find it really surprising that they are able to locate the Baluchis, but not the ISKP people. Recently, we saw that there was some kind of an arrangement between the ISKP and the Lashkar. So if Pakistan is, developing ISKP as some sort of a counter, some sort of a, I would say, bulwark, some sort of a counter to keep Taliban in check, that may be one area which we really need to look at. And Americans will also be interested in the ISKP dynamics also. So I think that this is a very complex and a very layered scenario.
Yes.
There's nothing absolute in this sense.
All right. Thank you for putting it so clearly and in brief words. But I am afraid, gentlemen, that's all the time I had this evening. Thank you very much, Captain Alok Bansal, Shiv Murari Sahai, and Dr. Pandya for finding the time for Media Scan on this festival weekend. So, as our guests have also pointed out, peace may remain elusive along the Durand line, and certainly there are concerns for India. We have to remain vigilant, to remain alert. But I am afraid this is all the time we had on Media Scan this evening. It's a wrap up on this episode, but do join us in the next episode of Media Scan with another subject of national importance. Till then, namaskar and happy Diwali.